always knew my parents favored my younger brother, Ben. He was their golden child. Top grades, football captain, full of charm, the kind of son they loved to show off. I was different, quieter, more creative. I wrote poems, painted, and even once won second place in a national story competition. But when I brought home that certificate, my father only said, "It's just writing." They never framed it. That's when I realized applause was something I'd never get from them. But nothing prepared me for the day they proved just how little I mattered. Before we go deeper, where are you watching from today? Kindly hit like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more. I had finally found happiness with Rose, my fiancée, who saw all the things my parents never noticed. She was kind, patient, and loved my quiet dreams. We met in graduate school and built something real. She stood beside me through every holiday where I was invisible. When I told my parents about the engagement, I waited for excitement, but Mom only sighed. "Oh, that's quick." "Are you sure?" Dad muttered. "Don't be too emotional on the day." That was all. Rose squeezed my hand and whispered, "It's okay. We have each other." We sent invitations anyway, even arranged a shuttle from their town to the venue. No excuses. A week before I called to confirm. Mom's voice was cold. "We'll see." It was the same tone she used when she missed my graduation. Then the wedding day arrived. The sun poured through the chapel windows, painting the hall with golden light. Rose walked toward me, her eyes shining, and for a moment the world disappeared. Friends filled the seats, her family cheered, but my parents' chairs stayed empty. I tried to block it out, to focus on her smile, on the vows we exchanged. But during the reception my phone buzzed. There was Ben, posting barbecue photos from my parents' backyard. Laughter, grilling, even their dog wearing a party hat. My chest tightened. I stepped outside into the cool evening air. The sky tinted purple with twilight. Rose followed me, her hand brushing mine gently. "They're the ones who missed out," she said softly. I nodded, but no words came. I had learned long ago not to give them the power of my tears. Instead, I swallowed the ache and made a choice. That night, as Rose and I sat together in our small hotel room, I whispered, "They don't enter our future unless they earn it." Weeks passed, and the silence from my parents was deafening. No apology, no phone call, not even a simple message. Rose tried to distract me with laughter and late-night walks, but inside, the wound remained raw. One evening she said, "Maybe it's better this way. We build without their shadows." I wanted to believe her, but every time I saw Ben's smiling photos with them, it felt like salt in the wound. They had chosen him again and again, while I faded like smoke. 2 months later I decided to face them. I walked into the house I once called home. Dad sat at the table reading the newspaper, Mom sipping tea. "Why didn't you come to my wedding?" I asked, voice shaking but steady. Mom shrugged and said, "We thought it was a small thing, nothing formal. Besides, Ben was in town." Dad chuckled, adding, "Come on, don't be so sensitive. It's not like it was a royal wedding. Maybe we'll come to the next one." They laughed together. Their laughter cut deeper than absence ever could. I sat there staring, realizing this was bigger than disappointment. It was detachment. They had laughed at my pain, mocked my love, and treated my happiness like a trivial errand. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. "Thank you," I whispered. Dad frowned, confused. Mumbling. But inside me something had shifted. I wasn't thanking them for honesty. I was thanking life for finally showing me their true hearts, so I would stop waiting for scraps. A full year drifted by with no word from them. No birthday wishes. No call when Rose got sick with the flu. Not even a note when my first article was published in a national magazine. Silence. I channeled the ache into building my life, pouring myself into my writing and into the love Rose gave me. Still, sometimes I would scroll through Ben's posts and see their smiling faces, celebrating birthdays and holidays without me. It hurt, but slowly the hurt turned into fuel. Then one morning a message arrived from my cousin. "Mom's been diagnosed. Ovarian cancer stage 2. She didn't want you to know, but I thought you should. My chest tightened. She was still my mother, yet the word mother felt distant. I sat with the news for days. Rose held my hand and whispered, "If you go, don't go for them. Go for you. So you never carry regret." Her words lingered. Would seeing them reopen wounds, or finally close them? I wrestled with the choice. On a rainy Tuesday, I finally drove back. The house looked smaller, older. The garden Mom once cared for was overgrown, flowers choked by weeds. Dad opened the door, staring as if he'd seen a ghost. "Come in," he muttered. Inside I saw her, thin, fragile, her hair patchy beneath a scarf, wrapped in a blanket on the couch. She looked up and whispered, "I didn't expect you." I nodded and said, "I didn't expect to come." Her lips trembled, but no apology came. I sat down across from her, my hands clasped together. "I came for closure," I said firmly. "Because you never had the courage to say what needed to be said." Her eyes flickered with unease. "You laughed when I asked why you missed my wedding. Do you know what that felt like? Like begging for scraps of love from people meant to be my foundation." She looked down, fingers trembling. I saw the woman who once braided my hair but never noticed my spirit. "You poured everything into Ben," I continued, my voice steady, "because he was loud, charming, and easy to show off. But you never stopped to see the daughter who stayed up late writing, who paid for her own classes, who held herself together when you ignored her." A tear slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe it. "I'm not angry anymore," I said softly. "I'm just sad, for the me who waited for you to notice, and for you who will never understand what you lost." She reached out weakly, her frail hand brushing mine. "I don't know how to fix it," she whispered. Her voice was cracked, fragile. I sighed, standing to leave. "You don't fix it," I said. "You just live with the consequences of what you chose. Just like I did." Dad stood silent, arms crossed, refusing to look me in the eye. As I walked out, the rain hit my face, but inside I felt strangely lighter. I had spoken my truth, and it was enough. 3 months later, another message came. This time from Dad. "We need help with hospital bills. Anything you can do would mean a lot." I read it twice, my chest heavy but my mind clear. That night I drafted a reply. "You needed me as a child, but you didn't show up. Now you need me again, and I've built a life without you in it. I wish you peace, but I won't set myself on fire to keep you warm." Then I pressed send. It wasn't revenge, and it wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. For years I had carried their absence like a wound, but now it was finally scar tissue. Rose hugged me that night and said, "You chose peace, not bitterness. That's strength." I realized she was right. Walking away wasn't weakness, it was survival. For once, I no longer longed for their approval. Instead, I focused on the life we were building, a life full of small joys, late-night talks, and dreams that belonged only to us. Yet life has its way of testing resolve. Weeks later, Ben called. His voice was shaky, something I had never heard before. "They're struggling, and I don't know what to do," he said. For a moment, I wanted to comfort him, but then I remembered all the times he watched them overlook me and said nothing. "Ben," I replied, "you were always the golden one. Maybe this is your time to shine where it matters." He sighed heavily, but I didn't back down. Silence lingered. Rose watched me wrestle with guilt after that call. One evening she said, "You can care without carrying. You can love without losing yourself." Her words sank deep. I still loved my family, but love doesn't erase history. Every memory of being invisible, every slight remark, every empty chair at my wedding, they were all stitched into me. And now, with each plea for help, I realized my family had taught me one lesson. People who ignore your worth rarely change when they finally need you. Time moved on, and so did I. My writing began to bloom. A small magazine in Cape Town picked up one of my essays, and soon I was invited to share more. Rose cheered louder than anyone. "See," she said, "your words matter." Her joy filled the spaces my parents left empty. One night, as I looked over my work, I whispered, I finally found my audience. For once, it wasn't about who clapped from the family pews. It was about me clapping for myself. But still, the past had a way of haunting me. One afternoon, Dad left a voicemail. His tone wasn't proud, wasn't mocking, just tired. "We're not as strong as before. If you can think of us." I listened, my chest tight. I remembered his laughter at my pain, the way he brushed off my dreams. Rose placed her hand on mine. "You don't owe them your life," she said gently. And she was right. I had learned love without boundaries can turn into chains. I refused chains. The months that followed brought new milestones. Rose and I celebrated our first anniversary with laughter, dancing barefoot in our living room. For the first time, happiness didn't feel borrowed. Then came the invitation to speak at a small event in Johannesburg about resilience. I stood before strangers and told them about blooming without water, about surviving neglect and finding strength in silence. As I spoke, I saw tears in the eyes of the audience. In that moment, I realized my story was not just mine. After the talk, a young woman approached me. "Your words gave me courage," she said. "My family never believed in me either." Her voice trembled, but her smile was steady. I hugged her and whispered, "You are enough, even if they never say it." Walking back to Rose, I felt a shift. Maybe the family I lost had been replaced with a larger one, a community of souls who understood pain, rejection, and resilience. That thought filled me with a strength I had never known before. Yet the messages from home did not stop. Another email arrived. "We need you," Dad wrote again. "This time it's urgent." I stared at the words for a long time, my fingers hovering above the keyboard. Rose walked in and asked, "What will you do?" I smiled faintly. "I'll do nothing. Because sometimes silence is an answer. Sometimes the loudest no is the quiet refusal to keep being the one who fixes what others deliberately broke." I shut my laptop and chose my peace again. Years later, the world finally noticed me. My essays reached international journals, and an invitation came for a TED Talk in Accra. The hall was packed, lights bright, and Rose sat in the front row, her smile beaming like a lighthouse. I told the audience of a child who bloomed without applause, of love that grew in silence, of scars that became wings. As I spoke, applause filled the hall. It was thunderous, healing. For once, the validation I had longed for came, not from family but from myself. When I stepped off that stage, people stood clapping. Strangers hugged me, some crying, some thanking me for sharing truth. And in the back I saw Rose, tears in her eyes, pride on her face. I walked toward her and she whispered, "You didn't just heal yourself, you healed others." I smiled, realizing the journey had never been about forcing my parents to see me. It was about learning to see myself. And at that moment I knew I had finally won. But life always circles back with tests. Months after my talk, I received a letter. It wasn't from my parents, but from Ben. His words were careful. "They're weaker now. They keep asking for you. I don't know how long they have." I sat still, the paper trembling in my hands. Rose read over my shoulder and said softly, "You don't have to open old wounds." I nodded, torn between compassion and self-preservation. Memories of laughter at my pain still echoed like unhealed scars. I thought of all the birthdays they forgot, the graduation they missed, the wedding barbecue they held while my vows went unheard. The hurt felt fresh again. But this time, instead of anger, I felt something else, clarity. I whispered to myself, "Some people are not bridges to cross, but lessons to learn." That night, Rose asked me, "Do you regret not having them in your life?" I answered slowly, "I regret who they chose to be. But I don't regret choosing myself." Ben kept writing, his tone shifting from pleading to frustration. "You're being stubborn. Family is family." I shook my head reading it. Family, I thought, is supposed to show up, not vanish when it matters. I typed back, "Ben, I wish them peace. But peace doesn't mean my presence. If they never showed up for me, why do you expect me to break myself for them now?" His reply never came. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about silence. Meanwhile, life moved with grace. Rose and I built something unshakable. Quiet dinners, walks under moonlight, laughter that never mocked, support that never wavered. My writing flourished. I was invited to contribute to a major journal in Lagos, and the editor said, "Your voice carries weight." Rose smiled when I told her and whispered, "I always knew you were more than enough." In her eyes, I saw the family I had searched for. In her embrace, I found the home my parents never gave me. Then came another turning point. At a book launch in Nairobi, I met readers who had followed my journey online. One man stood and said, "Your story saved me from ending mine." "Thank you." The room was silent, then filled with applause. I held back tears, realizing that my pain had been transformed into medicine for others. Rose squeezed my hand as I whispered, "I used to think my family's silence defined me. Now I know my voice defines me." That realization set me free. But freedom doesn't erase memories. One night, I dreamed of sitting again at that kitchen table, hearing their laughter when I asked why they missed my wedding. I woke with tears wetting my face. Rose held me close and said, "Even scars ache when the rain comes. But remember, you've already healed." Her words steadied me. Healing, I realized, wasn't forgetting. Healing was choosing every day not to let their absence silence my joy anymore. And with Rose beside me, that choice became easier. I often wondered if they ever thought of me, if Dad regretted brushing off my dreams, if Mom wished she had shown up even once. But then I reminded myself, their silence was their answer. Love, to be real, must be mutual. I stopped looking backward. Instead, I poured myself into forward steps, teaching workshops, mentoring young writers, speaking to students who felt invisible. Every time I told them, "Your voice matters," I was also reminding myself. That message became my shield, my gift, my legacy. Years passed, and Rose and I built a family of our own. Not in the traditional sense at first, but in friendships that became blood, and in communities that embraced us without condition. Our home was full of laughter, warmth, and truth. One evening, as we hosted dinner for friends, someone asked, "Don't you ever wish your parents were here?" Paused, then smiled. "No," I said softly. "Because everything they failed to give me taught me how to give without failing." The table clapped in understanding. It was on our 10th anniversary that I looked back and realized how far we had come. Rose handed me a small gift, a pen engraved with the words, "Your story saved lives." Tears filled my eyes as she whispered, "This is who you are. This is who you've always been." In that moment I felt no bitterness, only gratitude. My parents had denied me their applause, but life had given me something greater. A partner who saw me, a voice that mattered, and a purpose that endured. The final time I heard from Ben, his message was short. "They're gone." I sat quietly, my heart heavy but not broken. Rose placed her hand over mine. "Do you want to go?" she asked. I shook my head. "No. I already said goodbye years ago." I whispered a prayer for their peace, not because they had earned it, but because I had. My journey had taught me the most powerful truth. Forgiveness does not always mean reconnection. It sometimes means letting go and walking forward whole. After their passing, the silence felt different. It was no longer the silence of rejection but the quiet of finality. Rose and I sat together that evening, the weight of the news between us. She whispered, "You didn't lose parents today. You lost the idea of what they should have been." Her words cut deep, but they were true. I realized I had spent half my life mourning people who were alive. Now I could finally stop mourning and start fully living. Months later, I was invited to deliver a keynote speech in Cape Town. Standing before hundreds, I told my story not with bitterness but with wisdom. I once thought love meant never giving up on people, even when they gave up on me. But true love means never giving up on yourself. The audience rose to their feet in applause. I smiled, not for recognition, but for the truth I had embraced. The child who once craved applause had learned to clap for himself. As I walked off the stage, I saw Rose waiting, her eyes glistening with pride. She hugged me tightly and whispered, You turned pain into power. That's your gift. I knew then that my journey wasn't about revenge or resentment. It was about transformation. The wounds that once made me bleed now made me strong enough to help others heal. And for every person who felt unseen, I wanted my voice to remind them that they mattered, even when the world chose not to see them. Life unfolded with new beginnings. Rose and I built a family filled with laughter, honesty, and unwavering support. Our children grew up knowing they were cherished, their voices heard. I told them often, "You are enough just as you are." In their eyes, I saw the reflection of the love I had always longed for. I promised myself I would never repeat the mistakes my parents made. Instead, I would plant gardens of love so no child of mine ever bloomed without water. Years later, as I sat writing my memoir, I looked back on the journey. From empty chairs at my wedding to standing ovations in halls across cities, my life had come full circle. I realized I never needed their validation. I only needed my own voice. With Rose beside me, I smiled and whispered, "I made it. The world may remember me as a writer, a speaker, a survivor, but in my heart, I am simply someone who chose love over pain and finally found peace."